Do you know what's stopping you from doing that one thing you've always wanted to do? You don't, because it doesn't exist. This is Josh Bauer, and no, it really doesn't exist. Should you get your CDL license? Well, to answer that question, you have to figure out why you're asking it in the first place. There are a couple of different reasons why you would want a CDL. All of them basically involve working. Theoretically, I guess if you wanted to drive a tractor trailer for personal use, I don't know what you would do with that, unless you have some sort of business. Even then, you could still put it under the umbrella of working. So, other than for a job or a business that you own, I can't really imagine any utility in having a CDL. So let's put that first and foremost, that getting a CDL is going to be either to benefit your employment or your business. So what jobs or professions require you to have a CDL? Well, there's two types of CDLs, a CDL Class A and a CDL Class B. CDL Class A is basically going to be tractor trailers, and Class B is going to be smaller stuff like school buses, city buses, garbage trucks, maybe even some types of dump trucks. A lot of this is categorized by weight. Some of it, I believe, is categorized by air brakes and a couple other things. So you can drive like a box truck, like a U-Haul, without any sort of CDL at all. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now, and I don't have a CDL at the moment. I started training for my CDL back in August. And the reason I did that is, well, I have a couple of reasons why. So I'm going straight to tractor trailers. I'm not messing with any of the stuff in between. I mean, except for the box trucks I've already been driving. But when it comes to, once I get my CDL, I'm not going to try to do, dump trucks or buses or anything like that. I'm just going to go right to tractor trailers. In fact, today, well, I was driving a little bit today as part of my training. I went over the Buffalo Skyway for the first time in a tractor trailer. And I've done it a lot in trucks, and obviously all the time in my car and on my motorcycle, but I don't know, it's just, you're so much higher up when you're in a tractor trailer. It's like you can see right over the edges. It's kind of scary, but yeah, I did that for the first time today, so I'm enjoying it, and I'm learning a manual tractor trailer, which, standard, which when I first started was extremely difficult. And this is coming from somebody who's already driven a manual car for over a year and a motorcycle for over 2 years, and this was still incredibly difficult. And the reason it was incredibly difficult to learn how to drive a manual tractor trailer is because of something called double clutching. So in a typical standard car, when you shift, you just push in a clutch and you change your gears, you let go of the clutch. Well, in a tractor trailer, it's a lot different. So you want to go to upshift, you have to push in the clutch, put transmission in neutral, and then let go of the clutch. And then push a clutch in again and put the transmission into the higher gear, then let go of the clutch. So that's why it's called double clutching. It's because you have to push in the clutch and then let it go 2 separate times. When you downshift, you have to push in the clutch, put the transmission in neutral, and then let go of the clutch and rev up the gas pedal, and then push the clutch again, and put the gear into a lower gear, and then let go of the clutch. So downshifting is even harder because you have to rev in between your 2 presses of the clutch. And you say, well, why do you have to rev? Well, if you don't put the transmission into gear while the tachometer is at within a certain range in terms of RPMs, specifically between 1,000 and 1,500, I believe. Yeah. Is it? Let me think about that. I know it's 10 and 15, and then it's times 100. So yeah, between 1,000 and 1,500. If you don't do it if you don't downshift when it's around 1,000 RPMs, or if you don't upshift when it's around 1,500, then it's not going to go into gear. It's just going to stay stuck in neutral, and that's not good at all. Obviously, if you're not in gear, then you can't step on the gas. and you also can't engine brake. So two good reasons why you don't want to have, you don't want to be stuck going 45 miles an hour without being in a gear. Now, if you have good brakes, and you better have good brakes, or else you shouldn't be driving the truck, then you should be able to still slow it down with your brakes. But still, you don't want to get stuck in neutral while you're driving. So yeah, it's harder. It's definitely harder to shift, much harder to shift. Now, a lot of trucks that have been manufactured recently are automatic, so you won't have to really worry about the double clutching. But the thing is, when you go to take your road test, you can take your road test in an automatic to get your CDL license, but then you'll have a restriction to where you can only drive automatic tractor trailers. Depending on the job that you're hoping to get, I think it will benefit you to have no restrictions. So in other words, I would recommend learning how to drive a manual, and that's why I did it. If I should say when I do start driving tractor trailers, I would prefer to drive an automatic, I think. I mean, recently I've gotten better at manuals. The instructor was saying that I did incredibly well today while I was driving, and I'm honestly starting to enjoy the shifting a little bit. But that said, I think it's going to be a lot easier on the road to have an automatic when you don't have to worry about shifting. The only other thing that you really have to be concerned with is making sure that the rear tires of your trailer don't go over the curb, or don't, go over the other lanes when you're turning left, or the curb when you're turning right. You want to make sure that your trailer doesn't deviate too far from the line of travel that your tractor is going in, or your lane, right? You don't want your trailer to be out of your lane and hit other cars and stuff, because obviously there's a pivot between your tractor and your trailer, and so if your tractor turns left, your trailer is going to turn left too, but your trailer is actually going to go wider left than your tractor did. So you still have to worry about steering in that sense, but you don't have to worry about shifting as much. And I've driven somewhat bigger trucks for a little while, so I've gotten used to that part. So I do think I would drive an automatic, but nonetheless, it's good to have and it's good to not have that restriction on your license, just in case for some reason you do find yourself in a position where you are expected, or where it would benefit you to be able to drive a manual later on in your career. You don't want to have to go back and pay a whole nother however many thousands of dollars just to go through a school again and retake the road test, because to my understanding, even if you're just going back to get rid of that endorsement, the DMV will not even schedule you for a road test unless you're going through a qualified school, and those are pretty expensive. So I would recommend just learning all of it the very first time, learning how to get it with your manual endorsement. I would advise getting as many of the endorsements as you can. There's a bunch of them. Hazmat is a really important one. I mean, to be fair, it's hazmat. It is what it sounds like. Like you're transporting hazardous material. So it's higher risk, but it's higher pay. But then again, if you weren't into risk, you probably wouldn't be driving in the first place. So most tractor trailer drivers go into the job with an expectation that they're going to take some of the more dangerous cargo and whatnot to try to get paid a little bit more, because that's probably why they're in it in the first place. Which brings me around to why I got into it. So, number one, I need money, right? I want to be a helicopter pilot, and that's not cheap or free. And I don't, I have a couple different business formulations and ideas, and I also have one that I would consider more of an idea, which is my corner tactics brand. I'm getting a decent number of sales from that, but it's nowhere near anything to sustain or to fund helicopter training, right? And so I've had a couple of jobs over the past year or so since I graduated college, and especially the first one, as soon as I got out of college, was an amazing job. I had that for almost a year, and I really enjoyed that job. But I was at a cap in terms of how much I was learning, and it was a sales rep job, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. I loved the job, and it was good pay too. It was pretty good pay. But even while I was at that job, I kind of thought of, so I was basically I was a sales rep for Boar's Head, right, which is a meat distribution Well, it's Boar's Head itself is a brand that manufactures the meat. And then the company I worked for was a middleman distributor of that. And so I would distribute that product to all the top stores in Buffalo, basically. Well, I wouldn't transport it, but I would meet the drivers at the top stores. And while I was at one of the top stores, Tops is a retail store, and there's all sorts of trucks coming in and out and stuff, and you get to talk to some of these truck drivers. And one time I was talking to someone who was from Indiana, and he was an over-the-road truck driver, and he was telling me how he was like in California last week, and then he came from Indiana, then he went to California, then he came over here to Buffalo and was distributing some stuff here, then he was going back to Missouri. And this was all over the process of just a couple weeks. I don't remember how weeks, like enough time for him to travel, obviously, between all these places, which is, California and New York is a pretty long trip. But, that's when I first started thinking, I kind of want to do this for a little bit. I mean, he was telling me about how he wanted to own his own truck and stuff. And some people do that. It's called owner-operator. I don't think I want to do that because this is not my career. If this was a career for me, then maybe. Even then, it's questionable. I think that a lot of the advice, and I've taken into consideration a lot of the advice on the topic, a lot of the advice is to just be a company driver, just use the company's trucks and just be an employee. Don't go out and lease or buy your own truck because it's just more hassle than it's worth. That's a lot of what I hear, and that's even if you do want to make a career out of it, but I'm not even going to be in this job for more than probably 3 or 4 years is my guess. Listen, I want to be a pilot pretty soon, and I already have the medical certificate. The only thing I'm waiting on is the money, and unless I'm egregiously negligent and irresponsible with money over the next 2 years, I don't see how I can't save up enough to at least, I don't like taking out debt for student loans or for anything for that matter. But if I can get $20,000 in savings and then on top of that have maybe $60,000 or $80,000 saved up and allocated towards this education, that's if I want a bachelor's degree in aviation. If I don't want a bachelor's degree in aviation, then 60 to 80 would absolutely knock out all my licenses to be a pilot. Just the training itself. I don't think that would cost more than 30 or 40. But if I wanted a bachelor's in aviation from a reputable institution, a reputable college, it's probably going to cost like 80 or 100, maybe even a little bit more, $1,000. And so even, 60 or 80 to put towards that and then take out loans on the rest, that's a little bit more workable for me. But to just take out a $100,000 loan for training and a bachelor's degree is absolutely insanity. I don't care what you're going for. That's my opinion. Other people do things differently, but that's the way I'm going to do it with my life. So that's why I'm going for the CDL. I'm going to drive probably locally here in Buffalo for a couple months until I really get the hang of a tractor trailer, and everything's just muscle memory. I don't have to worry about running cars over and stuff because, I like to think of it in that your brain shouldn't be split. Your brain's attention should not be split between multiple things if you want to perform effectively. So if I am driving around in, I don't know, California or South Carolina, some place where I've never been, in a tractor trailer and it's like my first month driving, my brain's attention is going to be split among two different things. Number one, how to not run people over, and number two, where am I going, right? But if I start out in Buffalo, I already know the area very, very well. All of my jobs, and I mean all of them that I've had here in Buffalo so far, have involved a significant amount of driving. My first job, I was driving 50% of the time. 50% of, I was working like 8 or 9 hours a day and literally driving 50% of it all over the place. My second job was assistant property manager. I was driving around mostly downtown Buffalo, but still a lot of driving involved up in Tonawanda too. Back and forth to different properties that we had. And then my current job, I'm a truck driver, and I drive all over the place in Buffalo. So all of my jobs have involved a significant amount of driving since I moved out to Buffalo. So I know the area very, very well. So if I'm in a tractor trailer, I don't have to worry about missing exits. I don't have to worry about, bridges. That's another thing. I don't have to worry about which bridges, because I already know the area so well from driving, 12'6" trucks around. I know what the bridges are. I know what all the bridges are in Buffalo. I know what roads I can't take, which ones you can't drive commercial vehicles on. So it's just so much easier for me to start a little bit of a more difficult operation of vehicle, meaning a tractor trailer, to start that in an area that I'm already familiar with. So I don't have to split my attention between, oh shit, where am I going and how do I operate this thing? I can just solely focus on, committing my operation of a tractor trailer to muscle memory while I don't have to worry about the external environment as much because I'm already very familiar with the environment. To me, it just makes sense to start out locally for that reason. And then once I get very comfortable with the tractor trailer, then it doesn't really matter anymore. It's muscle memory. I can go anywhere I want. And truck stops and stuff like that is another thing. Like I don't really know what the deal is with all that. I've never been involved with sleeping overnight in any sort of gas stations or anything like that. Knowing where to stop, knowing where you're going to get told to leave, all the DOT regulations in terms of how much you have to sleep, how many breaks you have to take. It's all crazy. So I'd rather kind of take it one step at a time. And to me, taking it one step at a time is starting locally. The only way I would reverse that decision would be if I just absolutely need the money, but I can't envision myself needing the money so much that I don't really think that's going to be a problem. My expenses aren't that high compared to what driving locally would do for me. I think that should cover me. And then I would say 2 or 3 months into it, I would probably look into driving over the road. And I only have one pet, don't have a girlfriend at the moment. So I'm in a pretty decent place to where I can, in fact, I have an apartment and I'm thinking, it's 2 bedrooms, but 1 bedroom's my office. I'm not changing that. My office isn't going anywhere. But what I'm probably going to do if I drive over the road, I'll probably just rent out my apartment. I'll have to do some really good vetting on it. Thankfully, I have a, decent experience as an assistant property manager vetting tenants. So I'm going to end up doing the same thing for my apartment. I'm going to try to find somebody who I think is pretty responsible, but it's also going to be an interesting subletting or subleasing situation because I want complete control over the lease. Legally, I don't know if I'll be able to kick them out whenever I want, nor would I want to. I mean, I would want to give them notice, but I already talked to my landlord about it, and basically, if I did a sublease, I wouldn't be able to just kick them out whenever I wanted. It would have to be more of a roommate situation, according to my landlord. But I don't know. I'm definitely going to have to look into the legal aspect because I don't want to lose my apartment to them. I don't want them, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I have to look into it. I have to be careful, because I love this apartment. This apartment is in the absolute best place in Buffalo. Mind you that I spent a month and a half, almost 2 months, living in somebody's random room over in Amherst, which technically I still am in Amherst, but a different part of Amherst. Before I was just in a room and like $500 a month, and it was a roommate situation. And I was just there because I wanted to have enough time in Buffalo to figure out where exactly the best place to live would be. And I did not waste any time. I spent that time usefully, and I explored all the different areas in Buffalo, and I came to the conclusion that Williamsville was by far the best area. If I had to rank them, I would say, I like the village feel so much of Williamsville. And if I had to rank all the areas in or around Buffalo that kind of fell into that category, honestly, I really put Williamsville at number 1. Number 2, and this is based on the actual village itself and also the surrounding areas and stuff. Number 2, I would say Lewiston. Number 3, East Aurora. Number 4, Hamburg. Number 5, Orchard Park. That's how I would rank that. In terms of actual villages, I mean, Lewiston is up there. It's got oh my gosh, there are some nice views in Lewiston. Man, in the fall, what is it? Route 104. Just when you turn off 265. I think 260. No, does it? I think 265 actually ends, if I'm not mistaken. Right where 265 ends. I don't know the name of the road, and it runs perpendicular to 104. Get on 104 north, and you start driving. It's almost like a highway. This is right before you get to Lewiston. You're going north, and in the fall you can see like all the hills. I'm pretty sure you can see to Canada, which isn't that far away at that point. This is like near the what do you call it? Niagara Falls Scenic Parkway, I believe. You can see the entire landscape. Like you're towards the top of a hill, and in the fall it's just gorgeous. You see all the trees. You can see. I don't think this is an exaggeration. You can see for miles of just different color trees, different color leaves. It's so pretty. And then the village itself is very nice, and it's right there next to the gorge, the Niagara River, and the Whirlpool State Park and everything. It's a really nice area. And the dam, and Niagara College or whatever. It's a really nice area. But anyway, yeah. That said, and not only am I in my opinion, best village in Buffalo, but I am in a spectacular location within that village. Is walking distance away from everything. Not that I need to walk, but it's so nice. Just to be honest too, most people I feel like by nature are lazy, and this is kind of a scientifically proven fact, and that also includes me. So if I want to walk over to, the little waterfall here, or I should just say if I want to travel there, like if my only option is driving my car there, I already know the parking sucks. And by that I mean, especially during busy times, there's usually parking lots are full. There's nowhere to park. So I'm just not going to go. But because I'm so close to it, I just walk there all the time. And it's like, that's the case with a lot of places near me. I would not go there if the only option was driving. Now on a motorcycle, it's a little different because you can fit your motorcycle in anywhere. But still, I have to put a bunch of gear on. Not that I have to, but I do because I choose to, because I don't want to die. I put a bunch of motorcycle gear on anytime I go out on my motorcycle. So even that's just a deterrent from traveling small places like that for no reason. But when it's so close that I can walk, I do it, and I have very memorable experiences there. So all that to say, I have an apartment that I don't want to give up, and whatever subleasing route I take, I want to make sure that I do it correctly, so that I don't inadvertently lose access to my apartment. But that said, in terms of financially, yeah, I'm gonna try to get some rent income coming from this while I'm out driving 3 out of 4 weeks a month, and then on the week that I'm back, depending on how much they're paying me, I might sleep on a couch. If they're paying me 3/4 of what my rent price is or something crazy like that. Which I feel like is somewhat reasonable, because 3 out of 4 weeks I'm not even going to be there. The fridge is there. Is like I'm probably gonna. I don't know if I'm going to let them use my office. That's still up for debate. It depends on. It's going to depend on who they are and how much I trust them and all that. But they're going to get my bed, obviously. I'm not going to be there for 3 out of 4 months, so it wouldn't make sense to have them sleep on the couch. I guess they could bring in an air mattress or something, but still, like, if I'm only there 1 out of 4 weeks, I really don't have a problem with sleeping on the couch if they're paying me a significant amount of my rent, even though it's my apartment. And then when I can afford to not have to rent it out, then I'll just kick them out. But probably won't be for a little bit. I'll probably end up. You know what I'll probably do? It'll probably be a UB student. That way, like a UB student that's not from Buffalo. That way, I have some assurance that after they graduate, they're not going to be here anymore, and they'll want to leave. So I'm driving 3 weeks out of 4 weeks, and whatever company I'm driving over the road for, I'm hoping it's going to be the same company that I was driving locally in Buffalo for just a couple months prior, because, and when I say prior, I mean prior to when I start driving over the road, because I don't want to have to switch companies again. So when I do get my CDL, which is going to be very shortly here, in fact, I had my road test yesterday and I failed, and sorry, we're not even going to talk about that, but I'm going to be taking it here again in another week or two. So when I do get my CDL, I already have a list of companies. I know a lot of tractor trailer companies just from my research and the research of one of my assistants, one of my part-time employees. They helped me a lot in that research, and they came to some conclusions for me. And, well, I came to a lot of conclusions myself, but then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to give you a list of another 50 or 60 tractor trailer companies, and I want you to check off all these qualities as to whether or not they have them or not. And she did some pretty good work for me there. So I have a lot of tractor trailer companies that I know already. I have a pretty good list of the ones that I'm going to be applying to, and all of them are companies that have both local Buffalo opportunities and also over the road. And I don't want a team driver position. I'm sorry, but I don't like people that much. I'm not getting stuck in a truck cab. Now, when you're a pilot, I get it. You don't have an option, and it's honestly beneficial when you're a pilot for multiple reasons. But when you're a truck driver, it's just not a thing. I'm sorry. Listen, I'd rather listen to podcasts and maybe some music and then just have a quiet ride. Maybe I get lonely and bored and depressed. I doubt that's the case, but it's possible. And if that happens, then I don't know. Maybe I'll get a girlfriend and have a ride with me or something. But I don't know. I'm not a big fan of some random person a coworker that just gets randomly matched up with you, getting shoved into your truck, and you having to drive 3 weeks with the person that you just met. And it's not even because I'm not good at getting along with people. It's really not that. It's more so I like the freedom to be able to do things on your own terms. If I want to, where I park, where I eat, if I want to take my electric unicycle and just go ride around the city for 2 hours because I have time. Whereas if somebody else is with you, you have to be conscious that you guys are getting paid by the hour or by the mile, not by the hour. So he's going to be like, no, let's get going. I want to get paid, These are, just, forget riding around. Let's say you just want to, let's say you're in Missouri and you just want to see the St. Louis Archway or whatever. Like, these are things that if you're by yourself, you can just do whatever you want. Bobtail there, which is when you just leave your trailer, because if you take your trailer, then it counts against your time that the DOT monitors or whatever. Like, you have to have a certain amount of time resting. So my point is, like, when you're by yourself, you can just do whatever you want, and that's what I prefer. What was I getting at? Okay, so yeah, I'm just picking the same company. I'm probably going to want to pick a company that allows for both local and over the road. And when I start over the road, I would prefer, I guess I'll go anywhere, honestly. I'll go anywhere. Continental United States, Canada. I don't know about Mexico. I mean, I don't know. I hear some crazy stories about Mexico. I don't know. I'm not solidly against it, but I definitely, if I hear like, okay, you're driving to Mexico City and then up to San Diego, I'll be like, I don't know. That might make me rethink a couple of my decisions. It's not that I have anything against Mexico. In fact, I'm I don't want to say proficient, but elementary is a word. I know a little bit of Spanish. I like Spanish, and I would not be opposed to like some sort of prolonged experience in Mexico where I could practice my Spanish speaking skills. But that's really the only reason I would like it. Besides the food, I love Mexican food. But I don't know, something about truck driving in Mexico just doesn't hit right for me. And maybe it's just all the media, the bad media it's gotten. Or maybe it's those videos I see of, a car pulled over on the side of the road and this pretty girl that's out on the side of the road waving her arms like, help me. And the truck driver just flies right by because it's probably somebody that wants to ambush him and kill him. And also that takes me to another point, which is gun laws. I'm probably gonna have my pistol permit soon, and in Mexico, I don't even know what the laws are reciprocity wise. I doubt they're non-existent. I think it's highly unlikely that you can take a legal gun with you from the United States and bring it over to Mexico. I'm guessing that Mexico is less lenient on gun laws, but either way, it's still going to be problematic. I still feel like even they might be less restrictive on their gun laws for their own citizens, but typically speaking, bringing a gun to another country is usually not allowed in my past observation regardless of the country. And I prefer to have that on me. So Canada, I like Canada. Now, obviously, that same argument I just said would apply to Canada even more so. I know you're not allowed to bring guns into Canada from the U.S., but I don't know. Canada, I feel like, isn't as dangerous as Mexico, and I like Canada. You know, Canada would also be stunning views, in my opinion. If I got up to, like, Alberta, British Columbia area with all those mountains, oh my God. You know what I would love? I would love a route going from, like, Seattle or Vancouver up to Alaska. Now, I've seen some scary videos of trucks getting stuck in the snow, tractor trailers getting stuck in the snow on big mountainy roads like that. I'm not talking like roads up in the mountains, but I'm just talking remote, like with mountains around them. But the roads are so remote that nobody is there to help you. You break down or you get in any sort of dire situation, and I don't know about self-service. I mean, your battery dies in your truck, then you know, hopefully you've got self-service, a cell phone, power, enough power, but I would not count on self-service in those mountains between British Columbia, Vancouver area, and Alaska. I mean, I don't have enough information to know how good the self-service is out there, but I just know that's a lot of rough and high altitude terrain, and with probably most of the towers around it being either lower in altitude or obstructed by mountains. I just don't know. If you break down, you're kind of out of luck. But that would be a gorgeous trip. I would love that trip nonetheless. And the danger factor would probably be a fun part of it for me, to be honest. And the fact that you're completely on your own. Being away from people is both a bad thing and a good thing. I would probably try to focus on the good the good aspect of it, which is don't have to worry about speed limits, all this stuff. But hey, if I'm in a tractor trailer, I'm not doing anything crazy. When you're in a tractor trailer, you have one obligation, and it is to get your load safely and securely to its destination within the parameters, specifically time constraints, etc., provided to you. I have no desire to do anything crazy in a tractor trailer. On a motorcycle, on the other hand, you have one prerogative, and it's to to get as close to death as possible without actually dying. At least that's for somebody who watches me, that would be their conclusion of what my prerogative is, most likely. I do some pretty damn crazy stuff, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like, don't get me wrong, I haven't really experienced a lot of crazy remote situations where I'm out on an island or in the mountains or something by myself, but I think that would be a very interesting experience. So aside from the crazy mountain trips, Buffalo, Miami, and Seattle, if you're close, if you've been close to me over the past more than a couple months, maybe 6 months, you have probably observed or overheard my obsession, or I shouldn't say obsession, but my interest in these 3 locations. And they're basically 3 different places I want to live. And I'll maybe get into that more in depth in another episode. It's not really for this one. But point being, I'll probably, if I drive over the road, I'd want routes maybe taking me back and forth to Miami, back and forth to Seattle, and then from Seattle to Miami if possible. And a lot of times when you work for a truck driving company, you can't have everything. And the chances that I'm just going to be able to walk in somewhere and automatically choose my route, from what I hear, is low. And that's okay. I'm fine going to Missouri, and well, I'd prefer not to go to South Dakota. There's nothing in South Dakota except Mount Rushmore, or is that North Dakota? Either way, there's nothing in South Dakota. I'd prefer not to go there. But, I'm fine going to Colorado. Colorado would be nice. Nevada, South Carolina, Alabama. I've never been to Alabama. Or have I? No, I haven't. I've been in the top part of Georgia. Never been to Alabama. I lived in Tennessee for a little while. I'm fine going anywhere, you know. I don't need to go to Seattle or Miami in terms of driving trucks. But those would be interesting places for me to kind of, I like to think of it as conquering them. For me to, by that I just mean committing the routes to my brain. The routes and locations and ways of traveling around, committing that to memory. That would be nice to do while getting paid for it. But the way I'll probably end up doing that is not by driving over the road, but rather eventually moving out to Seattle and driving locally in Seattle for a little while, kind of like I'll be driving locally here in Buffalo. But why am I being a truck driver in the first place? Well, I already said it, actually. Money, number one. Number two, I like driving a lot. I definitely like driving. Yeah, I like driving. I've done DoorDash a little bit. Not too much recently, but DoorDash is fun because you get to see all these different restaurants that you never knew existed. So in some cases, ones that are like walking distance away from my apartment, and I'm like, wow, this place is not bad. I never knew this existed, and I could walk here. And then that's only the first 50% of the equation. After that, you get to deliver the food, which takes you to all these neighborhoods that you sometimes also didn't know existed. So if you're really into exploring a place that you might want to live, DoorDash is honestly the best thing for you, especially if you're talking like a little bit more of a rich neighborhood. You get to see these nice houses that you might want to live in someday, and also these somewhat nice restaurants. If you're doing it downtown, it's probably a shitty experience. You have bad parking, and then the places you go to probably aren't very good in terms of delivery. But, and parking, I just mentioned parking, but I'm going to say it again. Yeah, if you're trying to do DoorDash in downtown, it's flashers are your friend, but it's still not pleasant in a lot of cases. And also in terms of pay, you're better off doing it in like richer suburban neighborhoods if you want to make any sort of money off it. But either way, DoorDash is a good occupation, if you want to call it that, for somebody who enjoys driving. But you make a lot more money from driving tractor trailers. Obviously, your cargo is a little bit more expensive. And instead of broke people who can't afford or are too lazy to get in their car and go drive to a restaurant funding your career or your job, you have corporations, businesses that have very large profit margins who are paying you for their deliveries. So there's a little bit more of a money pool to get your hands stuck in, and that's why it's a little bit more lucrative. So that's also why I want to get into hazmat. In fact, as soon as I get my CDL, right now I'm not even worrying about hazmat because it would be a distraction to me. Remember what I said before about having your brain's attention divided among too many things and then you suck at all of them. I think I should right now just focus exclusively on getting my CDL license. Once I do that, I'm going to get the hazmat. That's going to be the next thing I knock right out. And you have to, there's a couple different sides of that. You have to pass a test. You have to get fingerprinted, and there's a couple other things. I believe the Department of Homeland Security, as well as some New York State agency. Maybe they work with the DMV and some other. I believe there's actually, and I could be completely wrong about this, but if I remember correctly, there's like a counter-terrorist agency specific to New York that works with Department of Homeland Security, and they basically make sure you're not a terrorist. Because if you have a truck full of gasoline, they want to make sure you're not going to drive it into some city or something and blow people up, which is obviously a good thing for them to make sure. So you gotta get fingerprinted, you gotta do the background check and everything, and then you got to you gotta pass the test. And once I do that, I'll get my hazmat endorsement, and I'll probably be, I don't know what kind of fuels and materials. I probably I don't know how the risk analysis would factor into that. I mean, I would definitely think it through. I'd have to look into the statistics as to whether I actually want to be hauling gasoline or something that's explosive. I've seen videos, and counter to what you would assume, at least in the videos I've seen, I've never actually seen a truck go boom, per se, like completely explode like a bomb. I've never seen that. Every time I've seen a fuel tank truck go array, it's just been flames, and then extremely big flames, like huge flames. I've seen a couple videos recently, but it usually starts out small, and then it gets huge and like balls of fire, but it's not one big explosion at one time. It's like just a really big fire. My point is, it gives the driver plenty of time to get out of there. So I don't know if the risk is really as big as people say it is, or as people would assume that it is. I guess it depends on what kind of fuel you're carrying and all that. But I do think I would want to get into something like that, where it's a little bit more dangerous. And when I'm flying a helicopter, I'll be doing something similar. So I'm not. To start out, you don't have an option. You have to do tours and stuff that's boring. Well, dude, I can't call it boring. Nothing you're doing when you're flying a helicopter is boring. But I guess what I mean isn't boring, but rather less dangerous. And I guess I have a faulty association where I consider something that's less dangerous to be boring, whether or not that's the case. But when you start out flying helicopters, you're typically not doing very dangerous stuff in terms of transporting hazardous material or anything like that. But I might, that's where the money is. Money is always with risk. If you want more money, you take more risk. So if you want more money in a business, you take more risk. If you want more money driving a truck, you transport the materials that will blow you up if somebody T-bones you. You want more money flying a helicopter, you fly, oil out to the oil rigs that are out in the ocean. So, and that's probably what I'll try to get doing. And I don't know. I think the chances of you dying doing stuff like that are low. I mean, people crashing a helicopter is probably the most common result of helicopter-related deaths, as opposed to a helicopter carrying hazardous material just exploding in midair. So, like, if you're going to die in a helicopter, statistically speaking, it's probably because of something that you would have done, some error, operator error mistake that you would have made, regardless of what your cargo was, and it probably would have killed you either way, meaning your mistake would have killed you whether you're carrying hazardous material or not. I don't know about the statistics with a truck driver, but I guess my point is, when I make risk assessments, I like to consider three things: severity of failure, probability of failure, and benefit of success. And to me, the severity of failure is high in both of these situations. You get blown up. But the probability of failure is, in my estimation, pretty low, to where it kind of negates that. And the benefit of success is pretty high, which is a marginal income. You could be making $70,000 driving a normal tractor trailer, but if you're driving a hazmat, could maybe be making $110,000. So, and that's not even talking about helicopter. Then again, helicopters, I mean, when you first start out, it's going to be a cheap salary. I believe it's like $60,000 is what I heard. But I'm not in it for the money. I'm really not. I mean, why do you think I have businesses right now? Right? I'm not. Helicopters for me is something I want to do for fun. By the time that I have enough money to fly a helicopter, I already said, like, I want a little bit of money saved up, but that's the absolute minimum expectation of myself. Ideal expectation of myself would be, I've got a couple successful businesses, and I've got, maybe even a couple of rental properties or something, to where if I don't know, let's say I have a medical issue, or I have, I don't know, I'm grounded for some reason, or let's just say I want to take a break from flying, I'm able to do that and live off of other income streams. That's what my goal is. So I'm not really into flying for the money, but you definitely make a little bit more money as you progress. And driving trucks is something that I think I'll enjoy. I have a friend who I met recently. He's a biker. and he drives tractor trailers too. He's a CDL driver. Drives to Syracuse and back from Buffalo to Syracuse. And he says that like you get pretty lonely doing it, and he told me that he didn't think that would be a problem for him going in. You know, that he's like one of those people. He's an introvert, and you know he was one of those people that thought that it wouldn't be a problem, and I'll just handle it. It's nothing. I'm fine dealing with a lack of people. And then he started doing it day after day after day for weeks, and came to the conclusion that, man, this kind of is pretty isolating. And I guess I know he doesn't regret it. He makes really good money, by the way. But, you know, it's a trade-off for him. And I don't know what it's going to be like for me, because like I said, I've never put myself in a position where I'm, you know, it's not like you're entirely away from people, but you're meeting new people every 3-4 hours. Like when you travel that much. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, the people you meet, that's another reason I want to do this job, is to meet people all over the country. So it's good and bad, both when it comes to people, right? A, you're kind of away from the people that you already know. But B, you meet a bunch of new people, even if those aren't really deep or long relationships. Even if you just exchange numbers with a couple of them, and they turn out to be an extremely useful connection that you find to be useful down the road, no pun intended, I feel like that's definitely a worthwhile trade-off, I guess, but it depends on, when I say worthwhile, it depends on what the other side of that trade-off is. I mean, I'm not typically one to get depressed when I'm away from people. I'm, by and large, an introvert, and I have no problem being away from people for long periods of time. In fact, the less people that exist in my atmosphere, the better in many cases. So I would consider my attitude to be similar to that of the friend I was talking about going in. But the question is, will I be humbled by the experience? So I guess we're going to find that out, but there's no way for me to find it out without figuring it out for myself. So I don't know. We'll see. 4 months into driving state to state, do I decide I don't want to do this anymore? I don't know the answer to that yet. But I do know I'm not going to be doing it forever. Now, I think that if I had to do this job forever, I would get bored like crazy. There's no way I would want to drive tractor. Well, first of all, let's be real here. I don't even think it's an option, okay? You see the Tesla semi-trucks. I don't know what they're called. They're technically still semi-trucks, but there's like a name for them. I doubt that truck driving is going to be a human job for longer than 15 to 20 years from now. Now I'm 20, so that would be when I'm 40. Yeah, I mean, but don't get me wrong, I never wanted to make this a career anyway. But same thing with drones. I got into drones a little bit, and that was another thing I just kind of wanted to get into temporarily. Drones and truck driving, I feel like, are going to be completely automated in the not too distant future. Helicopters, I think, and airplanes, I think, have long enough to go to where I'm either going to be dead or I'm going to be old enough that where I'm not even flying anymore for it to have any effect on me. So I'm not concerned about that. But that's just another good reason to buy real estate, because apartments aren't going to get automated. And if they do, it doesn't matter because you still own them, bitch. Okay, I get carried away, but seriously, you own an apartment. That's continuous rental income that's not going anywhere, as opposed to having a job where you don't even know if it's going to be there in the next 20 years because of robots. And, you know, that honestly applies to more jobs than I think people understand. With the human figure robots that Elon Musk. And, you know, honestly, Elon Musk gets a lot of attention. And don't get me wrong, he is definitely kind of the spear of a lot of these projects. But that said, China really should not be underestimated in this space. I don't know how well anybody else has followed this, but there was this thing, I believe it was called AlphaBot. And back when I was like, how old was I? 16, 17 maybe? I was obsessed with this thing. It's basically you've seen these, what is it called, Tesla bot, basically the humanoid robots that Elon Musk made. Well, there's something similar to that, like something similar to that in China, but it wasn't resembled after a human, it was resembled after a dog. And I think there's some of these that are like yellow or orange, and then there's other ones that are red. Honestly, I forget the name brand of them. It was a decently established name brand in China, but these things were modeled after dogs, and they're pretty smart. Like, they have eyes, like sensory cameras or whatever, and you can tell them what to do, and they can guard your stuff. They can walk around your warehouse and monitor and surveil and guard it. Honestly, they're like $5,000. Honestly, at one point, I was thinking about buying one, and I was like, this is stupid. First of all, the utility compared to the money you're putting into it is just way disproportionate. Like, you're spending more on it than its utility would benefit you. Cost-benefit analysis, number one. Number two, in 10 years, this thing is going to be obsolete, and the technology is going to be so much more impressive that everyone's laughing at this thing. And you'll be like, oh man, I wasted my money on something that is no longer, even close to the best in the field. And number three, it's so easy for somebody to steal it that I feel like I'd be more scared. I would be guarding it as opposed to it guarding me. Well, first of all, I don't need a robot dog guarding me in the first place. But I guess when it comes to like surveillance, like let's say I left it in my apartment while I was gone with the goal of surveilling my apartment, I would be more scared about someone breaking in with the intent specifically to steal that thing than I would somebody just breaking in randomly. So it wouldn't make sense. It would not have made sense. But my point is, like, between the dogs and the human robots and everything, a lot of stuff I think is going to get automated. And I think it takes somebody with a certain level of intelligence and also willingness to come to terms with the truth, even if it might not be in their best interest. I think it takes that kind of person in order to acknowledge some of this stuff. People that are already truck drivers, maybe that is their desired career. I think it's going to be easy for them to go into denial, but I mean, these semi-trucks they're already there. I don't know. I can't say that I can foretell the future, but I guess my whole point is I doubt this industry is going to be human driven for very long, but either way, I'm going to be out of it long before that change ever takes place. And then in terms of aviation, I think that'll take another 100, maybe more years to follow, and I'm going to be dead by the time that goes automated. So not going to be my problem. At least I hope it takes a long time, because I want to fly for as long as possible. And hey, I mean, we're talking about commercialization of this stuff, right? Meaning tours and like the mass, how most people transport. If I'm a good helicopter pilot and if I have a decent amount of money, first of all, I'm going to buy my own helicopter. That's not even a question. So unless the FAA actually outlaws human piloted aircraft, which I suppose is a possibility, unless the automation happens so far that, or unless the automation goes so far that actually happens, nothing's going to keep me from flying necessarily. It's just the industry as a whole that has more automated pilots than non-automated pilots, and so a lot of those pilots would lose their job. But if you have your own helicopter, you have your own plane, and you do it as a hobby, you're not going to be prevented from flying anymore, I don't think. And hey, if the FAA does outlaw that, then guess what? The United States is not the only country in the world. I'm moving to Australia. Bye. Okay? That's that. In fact, this is not my first time thinking about this either. Canada has a very similar... in fact, there's a lot of reciprocity between Canada and the United States when it comes to aviation. In terms, like, you get... I'm pretty sure... don't quote me on this. I've only looked into it briefly, but a lot of licenses and stuff apply. Like, if you get it in one, the other country will respect it. So there's kind of like reciprocity there, kind of like, driver's license in the United States. In the UK, I think it's called the Civil Aviation Authority, I believe, and it's similar to the FAA. I would probably want to go to an English-speaking country, and there's not too many of them. Singapore. I've thought about Singapore. If I ever had to leave the country, and when I say have to leave the country, I mean because I'm not allowed to fly here. Like, that is the one thing. If there's anything that chases me out of the United States, it's going to be an inability to fly, whether it's for medical reasons, like they don't think I'm medically qualified, which that was tough to get that certificate because I have a pacemaker, and that's not easy to get approved for the second class medical certificate with that. But if at any point they revoke that for medical reasons, or I don't know, they revoke it because they don't think I'm a good pilot, it doesn't matter why they revoke it. If that gets revoked, I'm not staying here. I'm sorry. Listen, I've only been in a helicopter once, but I didn't even have to fly in a helicopter. I knew it before I ever rode in a helicopter that I wanted to do this with my life. So you're not stopping me from doing that. I'll just move to another country. But that's the only thing that would result in me moving. All that said, I'll be out of the trucking industry before it ever gets automated. I'll be out, most likely, of flying for one reason or another before that ever gets automated. So I don't have a personal concern about that. This trucking thing, probably just for 2 or 3 years at most. I can't see myself doing it for more than that. If I am, I don't know. If I was driving for more than 2 or 3 years, why would I be doing it? It's a good question. I guess number one, theoretically, I just like it so much that I don't want to stop. I just don't think that's going to be a case. 3-4 years of just driving over the road, day after day, night shifts occasionally. I don't see myself doing that. I want to do it for 2 years for the money, right? Get myself some actual money. And reason number one, potentially, is that I like it and I don't want to stop. I don't think that's going to happen. Reason number two, I didn't make as much money as I wanted to, and so I need to make more. Or I did make the money that I wanted to, but I spent it all like a moron, and so I need to make more in order to establish that progress. Reason number three, for some reason, my pilot course of training or whatever goes off track, and specifically my medical certificate, honestly, is the only thing at this point that could prevent me from going farther down that route. For some reason, that gets revoked or delayed or something, and so I just keep doing it because I don't really have much else to do. I guess that could be reason number three. Other than that, there's really a time cap on how long I'm going to be driving. It's definitely not a career for me, honestly. Now, don't get me wrong. There are experiences that I want to have as a truck driver, so that's why I want to do it for like 2 years. I want to see all the different states. I want to meet a lot of people in a lot of different states. And it's not just about being able to claim, hey, I traveled to all 50 states. A lot of, basically all over-the-road truck drivers who have been driving for more than like 10 years can, or even less than that, can already say I've been to all 50 states. It's not hard, especially if we're excluding, well, obviously if you're a truck driver, you're probably not ever going to see the light of day in Hawaii per se, but like all states, all continental United States. But listen, I don't really care about bragging about that necessarily. I've already been to, I think, more states than not. 25 is half. So yeah, I've definitely been, I'm pretty sure I've been to more than 50% of all the states. You know, it's not about bragging. Like, I know some people that are like, oh, I have a picture of a license plate from every single state. I mean, that's cool. Again, I'm not really into it for bragging. It's more of the experience. I like seeing all these different places so that when I have enough money to actually be able to say, okay, I can move wherever in this country I want and I can do whatever I want with my time, I know where I want to be because I've already seen my options, and I already know a lot of people, and knowing people isn't just about knowing where you want to move, but it's about actually making some legitimate connections and legitimate, useful relationships that might come in handy later. I'm a very strong business thinking person, business oriented, and so a lot of my when I talk about relationships, I tend to tie it back into business opportunities that might come up in the future. Real estate is a big one. So that's kind of why I want to get into truck driving. And then just like with DoorDash, you get paid to do something I love, which is driving. So yeah, I'm going to get my CDL here shortly. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of how many weeks and how much torture am I going to subject myself to before ending up, before being able to get it. But I'm going to get it, and then right after that, I'll get my hazmat. I probably won't use my hazmat right away. That takes, from what I hear, you have to have like a year of experience driving before you can even do the hazmat. I'll probably start locally. I'm not touching the freight. I'm sorry, but the trucks that I've been driving over the past 9 months, 8 or 9 months, however long it's been, has I've moved enough cargo over the past 8 months to make up for the next 2 years. I'm sorry, but I'm not touching any more freight. Y'all can take it off the back of my truck in a forklift. I'm not touching it. Okay, that's where I'm at with driving tractor trailers. So yeah, there are a couple requirements I have like that. Number 1, no passengers or no team, right? Number 2, I'm not touching the freight. Number 3, at least to start, I don't know. I don't want to do overnights. I don't want to do them. I feel like this is a little bit more up in the air. Yeah. I'll have to think about that. But there are definitely a couple set firm requirements, because here's the thing. It's not like you're having to choose between Google, Microsoft, Apple, and Amazon. And what's another one? Google, Apple, Facebook, right? Like top 5. Like if you want to work for a reputable tech company, well, don't get me wrong, there are more reputable tech companies than that out there. But like if you want to work for someplace than that, you got 5 options. There's a word for those companies, and I forget what it even is, a phrase. But my point is, with tractor trailer companies, there's like, thousands. And well, okay, I don't even think that's an exaggeration, because you've got so many local ones too. But if you're talking over the road, definitely hundreds. Like there are so many options out there that it is easy to find exactly what you want with a little bit of time that you put into it. And I have a huge spreadsheet with, I'm not exaggerating, 200 or 300, probably 250 different companies and all the qualifications that they fit and all the ones they don't. I have like 12 different columns with check boxes, and I probably personally researched, out of those 250, I probably researched 150, and then my assistant Angela, she probably did the other 100, and she did some good work for me, and I have a lot of data on those companies now to where I can choose one that best fits all the requirements I have. Pay is obviously another one. I want a certain amount of pay. I probably want to just do dry van, which means like I'm not carrying anything that needs to be refrigerated, because it's just one more thing you have to worry about. I mean, if you forget to turn on the refrigerator, yeah, you just screwed up pretty bad. So that basically covers what I'm doing, why I'm getting my CDL, what I plan on doing with it, and what I think of the industry overall, what some of my requirements are, and what I'm doing afterwards, and also, in case I didn't already say this, why am I even doing it in the first place? So the question is going to just be between my expectations and the reality. So I've already outlined my expectations of what I expect this to be, kind of, in terms of the experience, and also what I expect it to do for me financially. So we're just going to see, does it work? Do I end up getting a lot of money from this? Am I able to keep that money? Am I able to have some of the fun and memorable experiences I'm hoping to have from this? And how easy does it turn out to be? How much do I like it? We're going to see how much my expectations actually line up with the reality, probably within the next 3 months. So I figured I would just do an episode on this. I think that it's always fun to document your expectations of something before it actually goes down, because then you have an objective, you have an objective record to look back on and be like, okay, I published this episode of me explaining what I thought this was going to do for me. It also holds you accountable, because let's be real about the fact that I don't want to be doing this for more than 2 years, realistically. If I'm doing it for more than 2 years, I feel like I'm wasting time that I could be training to be a pilot. In aviation, they say seniority is everything, and they say that because the more you're flying, like time is money to a large extent, because you have more years flying, more hours flying. You're always going to get a better job, both in terms of pay and in terms of the actual job. You're going to get a better job usually than somebody who has less hours. And so the sooner you start, the better in aviation. So if I'm wasting another year, if I spend 3 years driving instead of 2, that's an entire year that I'm not racking up hours flying, and that's just opportunity cost. That doesn't make sense to me. So doing this episode, for one, maybe some people who are interested in my reasoning can maybe draw something from it, but even more importantly to me is I'm holding myself accountable to some extent, because I'm putting it in stone, not only for myself, but I'm kind of holding myself accountable because everyone can look back on it, not just me, and say, okay, Josh, what happened to that podcast that you made 5 years ago where you said you were only going to spend 2 years driving trucks, and hey, here you still are driving trucks. What the hell are you doing, Josh? Get on your shit, right? That's why I do this, is so I can have a little bit of accountability and be like, yeah, I did put that episode out. Now everybody else is expecting me to do this, so I probably should go and do it. And, I do that because I do care about holding myself to some of these standards. I mean, here's a perfect example, right? The job I'm in now was never meant to be a full-time job. And I'm not going to say who I'm working for. I don't think I've said it before. I'm not trashing them at all. It's a decent job, okay? Management's decent. It's a decent job. I drive box trucks and I deliver food locally in Buffalo. It's a decent job. I have no significant complaints about it, but it was never meant to be a full-time job, and I ended up staying here way longer than I had ever intended. And it's not that when I started working here, I was just going to use it as a throwaway job. It just started as a weekend job, and I ended up working here full time, and that wasn't the plan. And I ended up just basically getting complacent and staying here. So I was here like 5 months more than I had ever planned to be. So that's an example of something, of a pattern that I don't want to be repeated. So yeah, I'm just taking some steps to try to hold myself accountable and get me moving in an area where I hope that I don't end up getting complacent. And we'll see how it goes.